You know, as we were just singing those two songs about Jesus being our firm foundation and about how he is a deliverer, it's been so awesome to have a front row seat to that reality in this church. And, from where I sit in my seat, I get to hear stories and I get to see those stories of life change and see the look on people's faces. And I swear, it's pretty much, I'm sorry, I don't swear, this is church. But you know what I mean? I mean, like, I come to church every week and I hear a story from someone that's like, I got to tell you what God did. I got to tell you about this answer to prayer. I got to tell you how my life has changed. And like, we are seeing God do that. And sometimes, when we're part of a church or in an environment for so long, we almost get numb to that, or we don't realize that's happening. It's the frog being boiled slowly. But I just want to share a little bit what God has been doing lately and how incredible it is to be a part of something like this. We don't ever want to take it for granted. And so, just want to let you know, some of you may have heard this or saw this post this week. Last week, we had our largest non-holiday attendance ever in the history of Hope Community. Like outside of Christmas and Easter, there were more people in our two services last week than any other point that we've had. There were 141 people who came through this little 5,000 square foot building last week to worship Jesus, to hear the word preached, to lift up his name. We are anticipating this week with two Easter services that are filling up fast, by the way. Just a little plug there if you haven't signed up yet. You can still come. There just may not be a chair for you is all I'm saying. We anticipate between Good Friday night of worship and two Easter services that 300 people are going to come through here and hear the gospel and turn their eyes towards Jesus and hear that good news proclaimed of the death and resurrection of Jesus. We saw 23 baptisms last year. We've got a couple that are scheduled for next Sunday, for Easter Sunday, as we celebrate new life and resurrection. And by the way, we are anticipating more. I believe that some of you are going to get baptized next week and you don't even know it yet, right? The Holy Spirit's going to show up and it's like, this is it. It's time. What are you waiting for? Right? We are seeing growth in our kids ministry and our student ministry through our weekly programs and things like the camps that we go to. You got to hear about Superstart that the kids went to last week and Move that we go to in the summer. And all of that is absolutely incredible. It is amazing to see God moving. But I say all of that to ask you this question this morning as we begin. What if all of that ended with us? What if a couple years from now we can go, well, it was a nice while it lasted. Had a nice run. Would you be okay with that? What if we stopped trying to reach our friends and our neighbors? You got friends, you got coworkers, you got family members, you got neighbors. Like, I desperately want them to know Christ, to know his power in their life. I want him to change them. What if we're like, well, sorry, we're just pumping the brakes. We're just going to coast. What about for you personally? What if your faith, wherever you're at on the faith journey, some of you are very new to the faith, some of you are seasoned veterans, okay, of the Christian faith. That's a nice way of saying you're old. Wow, Newt, just calling your mom out like that, bro. I'm sorry. But what if your faith, wherever it is, it just stalled where it is right now? Just like no more growth wherever you're at in the rest of your life, no more experiencing God's power. It's just autopilot and that's it. What if 20 years from now, I know we have a lot of parents in the room and a lot of grandparents in the room. What if 20 years from now your kids are no longer following Christ? We get all excited. We saw it last week. It was incredible. We sit in the 10:30 service. Our two. Sorry, I'm pointing at you guys right now. But normally there's kids sitting here, right, for the first two songs, and they're here with us. And last week we didn't even have enough seats for the kids. There were 4 cheeks per seat last week. Okay, they were sharing their kids, so they're small, so it worked. And we love hearing them like sing about Jesus and learning about him. What if they all just walk away? Statistically speaking, it's about 60 to 70% of kids that grow up in church end up walking away from the faith. Are we okay with that? I'm not. And I really don't think Jesus is either. And so we're going to look at a passage of scripture this morning that actually warns us against that and instructs us in a way of preventing that, instructs us to do two things: to live our faith out deeply and personally, each of us, and also to pass it on intentionally. And so we're going to be in Deuteronomy 6 this morning. If you got a Bible with you, you can turn to Deuteronomy 6. I'm going to have this up on the screen as well, and so if you don't have a Bible, it's all right. If you want to hold a Bible and you don't have one, there's some on the window sills. Feel free to grab that. Deuteronomy 6. And here's what's going on. We've been journeying through the story of Scripture this year. So we're going to do the whole year, through the whole year. We started in Genesis, we're going to end in Revelation. And we are at a time now where Israel is about to enter into the promised land. God had promised a man named Abraham, I'm going to make you into a great nation. I'm going to give you this land. I'm going to bless the whole world through one of your descendants. And these people are about to come into the promised land. And Moses, he's still the leader. He's really old at this point. He is giving instructions to this generation that's about to come in. If you were here with us last week, you're like, this sounds familiar. I thought they were about ready to enter into the promised land, because they were, but this was the generation before. There was a generation that was at the edge of the promised land and all that God had promised to them. And they saw the land in front of them, but they had seen the enemies in the land. They'd seen these giants, and they're like, we can't do it. We can't. I know God said that we can do it. I know he said he'd be with us, but we don't trust him. We can't go into the land. We should have just died in the wilderness. And so God tells that generation, okay, if you want to die in the wilderness, your wish is my command. You can go wander in the wilderness. And so that generation wanders around for 40 years in the wilderness until they all die. And now their kids are the ones at the doorstep of the promised land. And so from last week to this week, in the timeline, we've fast forwarded 40 years. You know, they say time flies. It goes 40 years in a week, right? So that's where we are. And this generation that is standing there, they, the oldest of them were 20 years old 40 years ago. It said anybody over the age of 20 is going to die in the wilderness, but under that age, they're going to come into the promised land. And so the oldest of this generation that they're standing there, they might be 60, but they've got people that were born out in the wilderness. So there's kids all the way up to 60, but this is a generation of people that either never saw the miraculous things of Egypt, that weren't there at Sinai when God was giving the law, or the older end of things, they were there, but they would have been kids and maybe don't remember. And so what the whole book of Deuteronomy is as the people are about ready to enter into the promised land, it is a retelling of what has happened through Israel's wilderness journey. It is a retelling of the story of who God is and what he's done and how he's delivered his people. It is a restating of a lot of the law that was given to the nation. And so before they go in, for this new generation, this is Moses telling the people, remember who we are, remember who God is, remember what he has done for us. And in light of all of that, here is how we are to live as we enter into this land that he is giving us. So it's the whole book of Deuteronomy. We're going to look at one chapter, chapter 6, that I think really drives this home and the importance of living this out. So Deuteronomy 6, starting in verse 1, we read this. Moses tells the people that these are the commands, the decrees, and the regulations that the Lord your God commanded me to teach you. You must obey them in the land you're about to enter and occupy. And so when he says that these are the decrees and the commands, he's talking about everything that he said up to that point. So the first 5 chapters of Deuteronomy, plus everything that's going to come after this, like this whole book. He's like, this is it. Again, this is who this God is. This is who we are. This is what he's done. This is how we are supposed to live. He says, you must obey them in the land that you're about to enter and occupy. Verse 2, and you and your children and your grandchildren. There's a generational thing that is going to flow throughout all of this chapter. That's not just about the people he's talking to. It's about those who are coming after and after and after. That you and your children and your grandchildren must fear the Lord your God as long as you live. If you obey all his decrees and commands, you will enjoy a long life. Listen closely, Israel. Be careful to obey. Then all will go well with you. And you will have many children in the land, flowing with milk and honey, just as the Lord, the God of your ancestors, promised you. And so Moses' instruction is, listen, guys, you have to remember who we are, remember what God has done, and do what he has said. The instruction is not just know these things, but you have to obey them. And if you obey them, if you do them, life will go well. You know, you'll live in the land flowing with milk and honey. You'll have lots of kids. It's going to go well for you. It's going to go well for them. But the point that matters, like the crux, is you have to obey these things. You know, there's something to that faith for them as the ancient Israelite people, and also for us now that Christ has come and we're under the new covenant, we're following after him, that faith is not just a list of things that we agree to mentally. It's actually putting it into practice and doing it. And saying, because of who Jesus is, because of what he has done, I will now act upon that and I will live in a different way. Believing a set of precepts about theology or God or things that are written in the Bible and just believing it makes zero difference in your life. It's only whenever we take that and say, okay, this is going to change how I live. I'm going to walk in these ways. We sang that song, Firm Foundation, this morning about building our life on Jesus. And some of the themes in that come actually from Jesus' words on the Sermon on the Mount when he says, it's the wise man is the person who hears my words and puts them into practice. That's the wise person that builds their life on the rock. That's the person whose life withstands the storms that are coming. And the promise to them is a similar promise to us. We're not actually physically going into a promised land, but a life walking along with God. And he says, when you walk in the ways of God, life tends to go better for you. It's not a guarantee. It's not a 100% of the time promise because we live in a broken world, in a sinful world. And so sometimes there are things that are out of our control. But generally speaking, if you will put into practice the ways of God in your life, if you will follow and be a disciple of Jesus and what has been revealed in his word, if you will do those things, life tends to go better. Not necessarily easier. In fact, a lot of times it's harder, but it's better. When we put into practice what Jesus says about love and forgiveness and generosity and relationships and all these things, it costs us something, but it leads to a life of, I think we read about the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, patience, goodness, kindness, gentleness, faithfulness, self-control. It leads to a life of purpose and fulfillment. Things go better. And it's crazy because it's man, God made the world and he made us. It's he knows how this whole thing is supposed to function. And so if we will walk in accordance with his ways, things go better. And so this is what Moses is telling the Israelites. Don't forget him. Make sure you live this stuff out. Verse 4, listen, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. You must love the Lord your God with all your heart and all your soul and all your strength. This statement is the core, the heart of Israel's faith. It is holistic and it is exclusive. It encompasses all of them. Love God with your heart and your soul and your strength. There is no part of your life that is off limits to God when you are following him, and it is exclusive. The Lord is our God, the Lord alone. This statement is called the Shema, and it just comes from, in the original Hebrew that it's written in, the first word of the phrase is Shema. It means listen or hear. Shema, O Israel. So listen, pay attention, and again, not just hear it in one ear out the other, but it's deep into who I am. And it begins with the Lord is our God, the Lord alone. Now maybe you've heard that before. There's different ways of rendering that word. It can be translated either as the Lord is one or the Lord alone. I think contextually the Lord alone is what makes the most sense. As you have this nation of Israel who, their ancestors were slaves in Egypt, a land that had a bunch of different gods. The people they encounter in the wilderness all have different gods. As they're coming into the promised land, there's going to be all these different gods that are worshipped. It is a very polytheistic culture that they are living in. And the instruction to them is not for you. The Lord alone is God Most High. That the Lord alone is the one who has rescued you, has delivered you, who has fought for you, who is with you. You shall worship him alone. And if you know Israel's story, it doesn't go so well for them. They choose to chase after these other gods. And they chase after them in a way when they get into a land. Sometimes I think we think it's either this or that. Where it's we're going to reject Yahweh, our God, so that we can follow one of these other gods. It wasn't an outright rejection, it was addition. Oh, we can worship Yahweh and the gods of these other lands, and we can have this whole collection. And God says, nope, my people can't do that. There is one God who deserves your worship. There is one who deserves your allegiance. And the same is true for us today. We may not have the temptation to worship false demon gods of the nations around us and be oh, cool, I'm going to go to this other altar. But we have the temptation to put other things in the God slot of our life. Where am I going to find my identity and my purpose and my protection? And what's going to give me hope for the future? And so we worship at the altar of success or career or comfort or sex or money or power, all the different things the world throws at us. And we're I'm going to be a follower of Jesus, but I'm also going to have this thing that I need and this thing to tell me who I am and this thing to give me hope for the future. And God's instruction to his people, Old Testament and New, is worship me alone. I'm the only one worthy of your praise. This instruction then is what Jesus actually repeats and picks up on when he's asked, what's the greatest command? And we looked a couple weeks ago at the second half of this. It's actually found in Leviticus 19:18. Love your neighbor as yourself. But the first part, Jesus gets from the Shema. When he's asked, what's the greatest commandment? He says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love God, and out of that love for God, you love the people around you. But it begins with a holistic, exclusive love of God. It's like, if you can get that right, I'm solely committed to Christ. And I am loving him, heart, soul, mind, and strength with every bit of me. If that is the bedrock foundation of my life, everything else flows from that. Love God with every part of you. In verse 6, he just, really Moses is kind of reiterating, he's going to in these next couple of verses, the same idea of a holistic love of God, a holistic kind of faith. Verse 6, you must commit yourselves wholeheartedly to these commands that I'm giving you. There's no half-weighing our faith. Now, those of you who are chuckling, I know what you just thought, so okay. There's no halfway with our faith. It's like, I'm in or I'm not, you know? He says you got to commit yourselves wholeheartedly to these things. In fact, it's wholeheartedly is good, but it's more literally to write these commands on your heart. Write them on your heart. That the ways of God in our faith is not just something that exists kind of apart from me or out here that I just kind of do these things, but they are at the core of who I am. It is inseparable from who I am to like who God is. Like you can't just separate that out. Like my whole life is about him. And so you can see this pattern beginning to form as Moses is instructing them going into the land. When we go into this land, you must follow your God intensely. It's got to be you have to have a deep commitment. You have to live this out personally, deeply. It's not enough just to be like, cool, I'm an Israelite, so everything's going to go fine. It's like, no, you must own this thing and live this out. It's got to be at the core of who you are. And if it's at the core of who you are, it will not simply stay at the core of who you are. It will flow out to those around you, beginning with the relationships closest to you. And so verse 7, he then says, and repeat these commands, repeat them again and again to your children. Talk about them when you are at home and when you're on the road, and when you're going to bed and when you are getting up. So you got to live this out deeply, he says, but you don't just keep it to yourself. That you repeat this to your children. Now, I want you to notice kind of two things. Number one is this command. Sometimes we can think, all right, well, this is a command, repeat them to your children, so this is only for parents. And you're like, I'm not a parent, or I'm past that stage of life, or whatever, and so you're like, this doesn't apply to me. But as Moses is giving this instruction, he is speaking to the entire community of Israel. And so there are people that he's speaking to that they would be parents, right? Where they could take this directly and be like, okay, I'm going to teach this to my kids. But this was an instruction to the whole faith community. Like, yeah, it starts at home. And yeah, parents have a responsibility. But all of you around them right now, you have a responsibility to them. You have a responsibility to come alongside them and teach them and be another voice and be another source of encouragement and equipping. That this is a communal effort to raise up the next generation to know and love of the Lord. And the way in which it is to be done is really kind of boring. It's just normal. It's every day. I think sometimes, maybe if you're a parent, you've ever felt this pressure. I know I have at different points in my life, like, oh my gosh, I got to disciple my kids. And so we have to have this big structured, this is the time when we sit down and we do family devotions. And that's great if you have that rhythm of your life. But notice the way that Moses talks about it. He's like, hey, whenever you get up, whenever you lie down, when you're on the road, when you're at home, basically just in the daily rhythms of your life. And we might say when you get up and when you lie down and when you're in the carpool line, when you're around the dinner table, when you're driving home from church this afternoon, like just in the regular rhythms of life. Because if this is something that we are living out deeply, it's going to flow out of us in the regular rhythms of life. It's just going to be a part of who we are in everything that we do. And so it's just this kind of ordinary, daily, and yet relentless, consistent. It's not compartmentalized to a Sunday kind of thing, faith. And I want you to see next, like he's flowing back and forth between, all right, you got to live this out and you got to pass this on. He's going to come back into, you got to live this out, and then we're going to come back around to, and you got to pass this on. And so verse 8, we're kind of back to, this has got to be something you own deeply. Tie them to your hands, wear them on your forehead. He's talking about the commands of God as reminders. Write them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates. And so now we've had a reference now. In verse 6, we have a reference to write it on your heart, and now write or tie it on your head and on your hands. Heart, head, hands. And in the Shema, you just said, love the Lord with your heart, soul, strength. Communicating the same idea that this is how you think, this is how you feel, this is at the core of who you are, it's the way that you see the world. There is no aspect of your life, if you are a disciple of Jesus, that is not to be impacted by who he is and what he has done for you. To have God's laws, as it said here, written on our head and our hands, that is to say, it's on my head, so the way that I think, the way that I view the world, the way that I process information, the way that I make decisions, the filter through which I see things, the way that I have conversations, the way I determine what's right and what's wrong and how shall I orient my life, it is being informed by Jesus and his ways. And to be written on our hands is then to say what I mentioned earlier, that it's not enough just to know things. This is actually how we live in the world. It's how we operate in the world. It's how we do relationships. It's how we do parenting. It's how we do money. It's how everything that we can think of how I might engage with my heart, soul, mind, or strength in the world is to be oriented around this fierce commitment and love of this one true God. Heart, head, hands, every part of us. And notice also there is an increasing, we might say layers out or from deeply personal to public aspect of the way that this shapes things. It begins writing it on our heart. It begins on our head. It begins on our hands. But then he says, write it on the doorposts of your house. And so it begins to flow out of you to those around you. That we have homes that are centered around Jesus and his ways. Now, family, I know I'm just looking around the room. It looks a lot different for people in this room. Different stages of life, different stories. Some of you, your home may look traditional, like mom, dad, a couple of kids. Some of you may just be married without kids yet. Some of you may be single. Some of you might have roommates. Some of you might be empty nesters. Some of you may be widowed or divorced. Like there's all kinds of different pictures of what family looks like. But this idea of your home, the place that you live, it is oriented around Christ. So that when people do enter into your home, whatever home looks like for you, it's a house in the country and it's an apartment downtown, whatever that is, that people enter that space and they go, like, this is a place, this is a family, this is a person that Jesus is at the center of this. That there is something about the way that we operate, something about special things like hospitality, love, grace, things like sacrifice. It's like, no, this is a home. It's got Jesus right at the heart of it. And so it goes from who I am personally to those immediately around me. And then finally, it is a part of public life. When it says write these on on your gates, this is not like a gate at your house. I always used to picture it that way. I'm a very visual person. Like as I'm talking, there are pictures in my mind. And so I would kind of see this as like a little picket fence out front and a gate. Honestly, if you really want to know how my mind works, this will not surprise some of you. I see it like as the Shire, and like a little hobbit hole with a gate out front, and a little sign that says no admittance except on party business, okay? You got to be deep down the rabbit hole to know what I'm talking about there. But then, as you actually read and like understand the context, you're like, they didn't have gates like that in their homes. You only had gates or like fences and walls around the entire city. So it says, write these on your gates. He's saying, like, write this on your city gates. Some translations will actually put that in there to help us to understand that. And so again, you see this picture that faith starts. It's personal. It's deeply personal. You're living this thing out, and that's going to spill out to the most immediate relationships around you, and it's on your home. But it doesn't just stay there. It's going to get out into the public sphere as well. The way that you organize like your life, the people that you work with and that you maybe go to school with and that you interact with, it's like, yeah, my faith is impacting all of that as well. There are some people that are like, listen, you can have your faith and you can have your freedom of religion, just keep it to yourself. I'm like, that's not an option for Christians. That's not to say we're supposed to be jerks and be like, you must believe this, but it's like there is no aspect of our life that has not been shaped by Christ. And so we bring that into everything that we do, our personal lives, our family life, our public life. Over and over, this instruction from Moses, back and forth from live this out deeply, pass this on intentionally. And with that instruction, he then gives a warning. In verse 10, he begins moving into this warning of like, hey, if this doesn't happen, he says, the Lord your God is soon going to bring you into the land that he swore to give you. when he made a vow to your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. It is a land with large, prosperous cities that you did not build. The houses will be richly stocked with goods that you did not produce. You will draw water from cisterns that you did not dig. You will eat from vineyards and olive trees that you did not plant. And when you have eaten your fill in this land, be careful not to forget. Be careful not to forget the Lord, who rescued you from slavery in the land of Egypt. The warning is tied to the instruction. The instruction over and over is live this deeply, pass it on intentionally. Live this deeply, pass it on intentionally. Live it deeply, pass it on intentionally. Do not forget. If you don't live this out, if you don't pass this on, you are going to be tempted to forget. And then Moses looks ahead to the future, to the generations that are coming. Jumping down to verse 20 now. And he says, in the future, your children will ask you, what is the meaning of these laws and decrees and regulations that the Lord our God has commanded us to obey? And then you must tell them, we were Pharaoh's slaves in Egypt, but the Lord brought us out of Egypt with his strong hand. The Lord did miraculous signs and wonders before our eyes, dealing terrifying blows against Egypt and Pharaoh and all of his people. He brought us out of Egypt so he could give us this land that he had sworn to give our ancestors. And the Lord our God commanded us to obey all these decrees and to fear him so that he can continue to bless us and preserve our lives as he has done to this day. For we will be counted as righteous when we obey all the commands the Lord our God has given us. Moses says, live this out deeply, pass it on intentionally, do not forget. And one day your kids are going to come and say, Mom, Dad, Grandma, Grandpa, why do we do this? Why do we live this way? Why do we follow these laws? You know, why do we, for the Israelites, like why every year are we doing this whole killing this lamb and having this Passover thing? Why do we have that big tent set up in the middle of us? Like, what's that all about? Why can we only eat certain things and wear certain things? And why, we see all of our neighbors out there, why are they so different than we are? And notice what the instruction that Moses gives. When your children come asking you that question, here's what you say. He doesn't say, well, you just tell them this. Well, God said it and that settles it, so shut your mouth and do it. Right? It's not just like, just get over it, I don't want to answer your question. He says, no, when your kids ask them that question, tell the story. You tell them who God is. You tell them what he has done for you. And because of who he is and what he has done, that's why we do this. You tie it to this. We were slaves, and now we're not. He delivered us. He provided for us. He fought for us. He is with us. This is why we do the things that we do. This is why we live the way that we do. That faith is made real generation to generation whenever we tell the story of what God has done. That's true for us, you know. At some point, if you're a parent, if you were a parent, you know, your grandparent, you got people around you, even just like maybe you don't have kids of your own, but you're in a faith community. At some point, somebody's going to come and ask, like, well, why do we do the things that we do? Why do we get together on Sundays and sing these songs and hear like sermons from this text? Why do we take this little piece of bread and this cup of juice? Why Easter's coming up? Why do we lose our minds over Easter? And the answer that we are to give is we are supposed to tell a story. The reason that we gather and the reason that we worship is because we were slaves. And now we're not. Because God has delivered us. Because this is what he has done for me. And listen, as we talk about passing this on generation to generation, let me talk to our parents in the room. Do your kids know your story? Do they know what God has done for you? I think sometimes it's really easy to be like, well, I take my kids to church and we tell them the Bible stories, but has there ever been a moment where it's like, hey, Mom, Dad, I got these questions about faith where you said, listen, you need to know this is what Christ did in my life. This is who I used to be. And this is who I am now. You need to know that my life was falling apart. I was addicted. My marriage was falling apart. You wouldn't even be here right now if it wasn't for Jesus. They need to know the stories of what God has done and his faithfulness to us. And so it's because of who he is and what he has done. That's why we do this, because God has delivered us. We are people that live our faith out deeply and pass it on intentionally. And we cannot pass on what we do not have. We're supposed to pass this thing on. If you don't have it, you have nothing to pass on. And I'm telling you, It's got to be written on your heart, head, and hands. You want to know why? It's not the only reason, but why those statistics exist about so many kids walking away from faith. It is not because one day they said intellectually, I just don't believe this anymore. It's because they saw a disconnect at home and at church between what people said and what they did. Because they went to church every Sunday, and at home, nobody ever talked about Jesus. Nobody ever opened up the Bible. Nobody ever told the story of how God had rescued them and delivered them. Or maybe even worse, their family was one thing at home and a completely different, or at church and a completely different thing at home. And then they come to church and experience mean and judgmental Christians and a boring, lifeless faith, a faith that doesn't still expect God to move in power. And we stopped telling the story. We stopped owning this deeply and passing it on intentionally. And if it is not lived out deeply, it will not be passed on intentionally. And sadly, that is exactly what happened with this generation in Israel. And it's a warning to us. So what happens is, you read on, they enter into the land and they begin to take possession of the land. This is the book of Joshua, if you're curious. And if you're reading through the Bible in a year with us, you've come through this point already. But they begin to take possession of the land, but we get these little hints that they're not faithfully following the Lord. They would leave some things undone. They go halfway on some things. They wouldn't drive the people out. They'd be tempted to follow other. You're just like, I don't think this is going to go well. And so finally they take possession of the land. And you get into the book of Judges, which is, all kinds of crazy. But there's this heartbreaking warning at the beginning of Judges. Judges 2:10 says this, that after that generation died, another generation grew up who did not acknowledge the Lord or remember the mighty things that he had done for Israel. After the generation that Moses is speaking to at the edge of the promised land in Deuteronomy 6, after that generation died, after he had said over and over, hey, you got to live this out. It's got to be on your heart, head, and hands. It's got to be the Lord alone is our God. You got to pass this on. After that generation died, their kids grew up and knew nothing of the Lord. They didn't know who he was. They didn't know what he had done for them, and they did not follow him. Israel's story is a warning to us that faith is always one generation from extinction. That cannot be our story. It will not be our story. We are committed to being a people that we are going to live this out deeply and pass it on intentionally. And just like those instructions were given to all the people, like that takes individuals, it takes families, and it takes an entire faith community. Say, we're living this thing out together, and we're passing it on together. We want to be a people that live our faith out deeply in a church full of people that live our faith out deeply. So for us as individuals to say, you know what, the Lord is my God, the Lord alone. I will love the Lord with all my heart, all my soul, all my mind, all my strength. That God is not a part of our life. That Jesus is not one aspect of life. He is life itself. I like the way that there's a pastor in Texas, his name's Matt Chandler, the way that he put this. He said that Jesus is not the top priority in your life. He is the paper that your priorities are written on. Because to say something's our priorities change all the time from season to season. And to say that Jesus is the top priority of my life is like, well, that might change in a year. He says, no, Jesus is the paper that my priorities are written on. Even if they change, he won't. He's the foundation of my life. That we want to be a people that are like, that's me. That's my life. I'm not going to get it right. I am going to screw up. I am a sinner. I am wretched. I am broken. But he has saved me. He has rescued me. His grace covers me. His spirit is in me. I'm going to continue day by day by day to try to live this thing out. That's why we're committed as a church too, because it's not just about individuals. This is about a faith community. We will be a church that wants to help with this. We are never, and some of you are like, I wish you would. We will never let you be comfortable in your faith. Like if you just kind of want to settle in and do the church thing, you're going to find yourself really uncomfortable here after a while. Because we always are going to be pushing, hey, heart, head, and hands, man. Holistic faith, following Christ. Every part of us. Everybody's got a next step. Nobody's coasting. You're not done until God kills you and takes you home. Okay, that's when you're done. That's when you get to be with him. Until then, we are pushing. We are leaning in. We are pressing. We show up and we don't just show up to have a nice little time. It's like, no, we want to open this thing up. We're not doing fluff. We're not doing TED Talks. We want to know what God says. We want to be transformed by his word. We want to be transformed by his spirit. We want church to not be something we attend, but something that we belong to, where God's spirit is moving among his people. We are going to be people who live this out deeply. And we will be a church that pushes in that direction. And then it continues, and we will be a people who pass this on intentionally. Let me talk to my parents in the room. Discipleship starts at home. Discipleship starts at home. Moms, dads, you are the primary discipler of your kids. Now, I'm also aware that we have some grandparents in the room. And you know that your kids aren't doing this. And it shouldn't have to fall on you, but it kind of is. And there's only so much you can do. And I know there's only so much you can do. But you got to step in. And what I can promise you is this, is your church family is praying for you, and we are there for you, whatever you need. Parents are the primary disciplers of their kids. I'm telling you, our kids are going to be discipled by something. Discipleship simply means formation. Our kids are going to be shaped by something. They're going to be formed by something. Either the world around them is going to shape them by default to be just like them, or we are going to be intentional about shaping our children into the image and likeness of Jesus. And I think it's funny whenever I'll see like comments on the internet and people be like, Christians, you're just brainwashing your kids. You're right, I am. I would rather me brainwash my kids to be more Christ-like and follow him than the world brainwash them into the garbage that we see all around us, where they're headed on a path towards death and destruction. That is the default. If we do not disciple our kids, that's what's going to happen to them. It's our job. It's a high and holy calling. And you are equipped to do it. If you are a parent, if you are a grandparent, even though it's terrifying and you don't know that you can, I promise you, you can. Christ has given you all that you need, and you're not on your own, because the second thing, this is communal. We will be a church that is always fiercely and unapologetically focused on and committed to the next generation and helping parents win and coming alongside of them for that discipleship journey. This is why we do a lot of the things that we do, and we do them in the way that we do them. This is why I've had conversations with people over the years who are like, I think we should run this program, or I don't really like the songs that we sing and different. I'm like, honestly, I don't care. It's not about you. It's about our kids and our grandkids. And here's what I know. If there's a church that your kids and grandkids love, you're going to love it too, because you're seeing them come to faith and follow Christ. That's always who we are going to be. That's why, I get a little behind the scenes. This is why we do things the way that we do. About a year ago, we changed our discipleship strategy with Next Generation. So now across the church, we do the same we're talking about the same thing at every age level every single week. So right now, kids in pre-K, they're hearing about Deuteronomy 6. Kids in K to 5, they're hearing about Deuteronomy 6. Tonight at students, middle schoolers and high schoolers are going to hear about Deuteronomy 6. They're going to hear about it in an age-appropriate way with life application for their stage of life. But here's why we do that, because we want to be able to do the Deuteronomy 6 thing, that when you're on the road and when you're at home and when you're around the dinner table, that the conversations are natural. So when you get in the car and you go home and you go, what'd you learn about at church today? You can be like, oh, cool, I learned about that too. What did you think about this? And what did you think about these instructions? And we can just equip you to have those conversations. That's why a year ago, we starting our K to 5 kids, not you guys aren't in K to 5, you look good, but you're not that young. Our K to 5 kids starting in these first 2 rows right here for the first part of our service. So the reason we do that is not so parents can go, oh, it's so cute, the kids are singing. It is, but no, the reason we do that is because we want the kids who are part of this church to know that this is your church. You're not an afterthought. This is your family. This is your extended family. You are as much a part of this, and we want you to know what happens here and be a part of what's happening here as anybody else. This is why, quite honestly, we are fine spending a lot of money sending kids to camp. We will spend somewhere between $10,000 to $15,000 this year to send our kids to camp. Our grade school kids, but mostly that is high school students sending them to CIY. And we only ask students to pay a third of the cost of that. And then even if they can't pay that, we say, cool, it's on us. You're going for free. We'll never let money be a barrier for a kid being able to do something. We know what happens in a kid's life at a week at camp. To be gone for a week, surrounded by people that are encouraging them, hearing about the gospel, worshiping Jesus, it becomes an anchor point in their life. I have seen it over and over and over again. When they tell their story about how God brought them out of slavery to sin and shame and darkness, so often they'll point back and say, I was 16 years old and I went to camp. And there were some adults there that took a week off work and they put up with me. And they loved me and they showed me Christ. That's why we will always do that. I'm going to make a shameless plug here. If you are a high school student in the room, so rise, if you're in 8th grade right now or 12th grade right now, anywhere in between, or if you know one, if your parent or grandparent one, I will get down on my knees and beg you to go to camp this year. Give us 1 week of your summer. third week of June, and I promise you, your life will change for the best. You will form relationships that will be lifelong. You will see your faith in God come alive in a way that you didn't know was possible. If you want to talk about that, I'll be hanging around after the service. I can answer any questions that you've got. But the reason that we do these things is because we want to live our faith deeply and pass it on intentionally. We will not let Judges 2:10 happen on our watch. The world is broken. The world is messed up. We can't guarantee results, but we will do everything that we can that the generation coming after us and the one after them knows the power of the Lord and what he has done and what he can still do. We follow Christ. We live out our faith deeply. We pass it on intentionally. And we see God work. Now, I'm already way over my time. I got to compose myself a little bit. There's something I've been wanting to talk with you guys about for probably a month or so, and there just hasn't been a good time to do it, and I thought this seems like the right time. Just because this is not like the leadership's church. This is our church. Like, yes, there are leaders in the church, but we are a family collectively, and I want you guys to know kind of some of the things that are going on. And so we, as a church, we are underfunded as a church right now. Now, when I say underfunded, don't hear alarm bells going off, okay? We are in the black. We pay for all the ministries. Everything. We are good to continue doing the ministry that we are doing and be fine. But we are at a point where what we believe God is calling us into in the future and where he's calling us to go, to keep investing in the next generation, keep pouring into you guys, keep discipling people. It's like we're going to be hitting the wall here pretty soon. Some of you saw the post that we made last week of like, we know that this is not the long-term home of Hope community. We are out of room here. When God opens up a door there, we want to be able to run through it. And so just to kind of give you a picture, we are about $80,000 to $100,000 per year short on what our giving should be. And when I say should be, there's like national averages on church giving and those kind of things. So again, we try to be really, really good stewards. We take that very, very seriously. So everything is operating fine, but compared to a church of our size, we're about $80,000 to $100,000 short. And I want to challenge you guys that help us make that up and to see what God will do with that. I'm not saying, that sounds like an unsurmountable amount. Here's the crazy thing. That breaks down to about, if every adult attendee would increase their giving by $20 a week, that we would smash past that goal. $20 a week. You know what that breaks down to? That's deciding I'm going to make coffee at home instead of hitting the Dunkin' drive-thru. I know it's tempting. That's saying I'm going to pack my lunch 2 days a week instead of, grabbing it out. That's saying if you like a family does like family pizza night, once or twice a month, we're going to do homemade pizza. Tastes better anyway, right? And whenever a faith community comes together and makes small sacrifices, God takes that and multiplies that in ways that we can't even begin to imagine. And so I just want to put that out there. I want you to pray about that. See if that's something that God is putting on your heart to maybe increase your giving or maybe begin giving for the first time. We want to be able to step into whatever he has next for us. We're at a point where we really need to hire another staff position. I'm the only actual full-time paid staff person at our church. And when we were a church of 50, that worked. When we're pushing 200, it doesn't quite work as well. So just pray about that. I also want you to know that Christy and we are on board with this. I didn't do the math very well. I said in the first service, I was like, I went in and changed. Our giving automatically comes out on the first of each month. And so when it comes out in April, I upped it by $100. And I was like, wait a minute, there's two of us. So in between services, I put it up I upped it by $200, right? Because I want you to know, I will never ask you to do something as a church that I'm not willing to do myself. And so pray about that. See what God might lay on your heart. Who knows? Who knows? But it's a part of, we're going to be a church that is fiercely committed to deep discipleship, living out our faith, and passing it on. All right, I've way ran us over. I'm gonna pray. The worship team's going to come up. They're going to somehow make up for my rambling. God, you're awesome. We thank you for who you are. We thank you for what you're doing. God, we thank you so much that we can be a part of a church where we see the power of the gospel, where we see you transforming lives. We see the movement of the Holy Spirit. God, I just pray that you would just continue that you would continue to draw people unto yourself, that you would continue to transform lives through your truth, through your spirit. God, I pray that we would be a people that are deeply committed to living out our faith personally and deeply, and that we would pass it on intentionally. I just pray this in Jesus' name.